Oh, and welcome back to the Frogs War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. It's been another week of incredible TCU athletics. We've got the TCU football had their spring game, and there's been a flurry of activity in the transfer portal. TCU baseball has been kind of a disaster lately. There's been more action in the transfer portal for the Horned Frog basketball team and everything else going on around TCU. Russ, how are you doing? I see you don't have a face tattoo. You have survived your trip to Austin. How's everything going?
Yep, we survived the rainy street ripper down in Austin right now, and thankfully I made it all back in one piece. And before we get into this, I do want to issue a brief apology to the TCU beach volleyball team for jinxing them last week. I know we talked
You
very
did.
briefly about it
Yeah.
at the end of the podcast, and thought it was just going to be another four-match sweep, and didn't look to see how good UCLA actually was. Lo and behold, they're now the number one team in the country, but still 31 and 1 and number 2 team in the country is still a lot to be proud about. So I will take the blame for that loss. That's not on the girls. That one's on me.
Yeah.
So
No, I think you go ahead and take that loss now so that you just win out the rest of the season. Win out the conference tournament, win out the national tournament, and then take home the trophies. It's all good. You did them a favor with your jinx.
sad to see them get the tennis treatment though, and that they are undefeated and they
Yeah.
lose one match and all of a sudden they're not the number one team in the country anymore. And to UCLA's credit, they are 30 and 2. So I guess they do have a strong case for it, but I'm a little salty still. I gotta be a little salty about it. A little homerish.
And I mean, it was a close match too. It was like 3-2. It was TCU could have taken it, but and still got ranked wins on the weekend. So it's not like it was a total loss of a weekend. But um, yeah, we can probably hit the beach volleyball, whatever's left of that at the end here. Um, I don't know, Russ, if you got a chance to catch the TCU spring game on ESPN Plus at all. I was able to make it out to the Carter last Friday night. I brought a couple of my kids. They had it was a good time. It was a really pretty good crowd. I mean, it's obviously not like one of those going to watch an Alabama spring game or something. But it was a good crowd of folks out there at Amon G Carter, and um, got to see a good little show. The offense put up a lot of points. I think 44-6 was the final score, with the last play of the practice being an interception for a touchdown. But I think there's only so much to take away from a spring game. It is an exhibition. It is a scrimmage. It is kind of for fun for the fans. It is the last practice of spring ball, to where everybody's kind of ready to go into take their finals and move on to the summer period and into the transfer portal period. But what were your takeaways from what you've seen or read about the TCU spring game?
Yeah, I did read up quite a bit on social media and on the web after the game. Admittedly, I was probably out getting dinner and drinks with the squad while the game was going on, so I did not get a. I did see some highlights on social media, but from what I saw, the two quarterbacks, Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover, both looked really good. Some even argued that Josh Hoover had the better performance than Chandler Morris, had some really nice throws. And also John Paul Richardson, who we've heard about quite a bit over this spring period, having a really solid spring camp coming in from Oklahoma State. He looks like he's primed for a starting wide receiver position this coming year. He's an experienced player. He's a proven producer at this level, and I believe he scored one or two touchdowns during the spring game.
Two.
So
Yep.
he's going to be a problem, I think, for opposing teams that face the TCU offense this year. I think he's going to be a very underrated producer for this team and in this conference. So watch out for JP Richardson. Trey Sanders has also had a really good spring, and I really am excited to see what he and Amani Bailey can do. Is that I hate to use the cliche of the thunder and lightning combo, but Amani Bailey in the limited reps that he had last year averaged over 8 yards a carry and showed tremendous burst whenever he got the ball, and also showed a little bit out of the backfield in the passing game. So excited to see how that combo moves forward this year. And then you got a couple of young guys that are potentially going to have an opportunity to break out this year. DeAndre Rogers, who's been with the program for a couple of years, a former four-star tight end. Jorquarius Spivey's gone. He left the team to go to Mississippi State. So you're looking for someone to step into that Y slot, that hybrid pass catching tight end position that he played last year. Maybe that's DeAndre Rogers. I remember tweeting at Steven Johnson, who does an awesome job with the Star Telegram. He had made a tweet about DeAndre Rogers making a play in practice, and I had asked him if he is getting work at tight end or if he's getting work at the Y. And Steven said he's been getting work at both spots. So that's nice to see him being used in a versatile fashion there. And then on the defensive side, Shadrack Banks is someone I hope gets the chance to really see the field a lot. I feel like he's been kind of stuck behind veteran players at that linebacker position. Obviously, Jamoy Hodge is coming back for a senior year next season. So I think the middle linebacker spot is where he's, at his best because he's got a good amount of size and he's a really good tackler and he's extremely athletic. Hopefully he gets a chance to really get on the field. You have Johnny Hodges coming back on one side. With D. Winters leaving, there's going to be a spot there. We've talked about Jonathan Bax, the freshman, getting a lot of playing time, and maybe Marcel Brooks fits in there. He's been out with an injury. Jamoy Hodge has also, I think, been banged up as well, so Shad Banks has gotten some more run at middle linebacker. So a lot of players to be excited about. From everything I saw, there weren't any scary plays or any injuries during the game, and all in all, I feel like there were some plenty of positive storylines for the program, and we'll talk about the portal players coming up here in a little bit. But for the guys that are coming in from outside the program, I think several of them are coming in and making an impact right away.
Yeah, for sure. I think you said there were no scary plays. I don't think there were any injuries. There was one where a quarterback left a wide receiver hanging on a pass over the middle that got blown up pretty good, and was a little worried there. But whoever it was, I don't remember which receiver it was, but they hopped back up and were right back into it. And yeah, all of that definitely saw on the field. I think the Trey Sanders, you see the talent that made him a 5-star running back coming out of high school and into Alabama, where he runs angry. He runs with a stride that is it's just different. It's the thing that you see from an NFL running back. So I think that he's a powerful runner, but he's also got all the moves and the speed as well. It will definitely be a dangerous 1-2 punch, him and Bailey in the backfield. I think that you certainly don't see any drop off from one to the other. JP Richardson very clearly was got a lot of run. He did score 2 touchdowns. They were both from Josh Hoover. So it was kind of in second team type situations. And, I think he probably gets perhaps unfairly the sneaky athletic, the, Hunter Renfrow type, but he will be able to be an outside receiver just as much as an inside receiver. I think he made plays from both spots during the spring game, and with the departure of Jordan Hudson, looks like he might have a chance to be that guy on the outside. The other newcomer that was fun to watch was JoJo Earl, was getting run at the starting slot position. Had a couple catches and was out there a lot. So it was exciting to see him, and will certainly be a day one immediate contributor right away to the offense. You can see that already. Um, I think it one thing that hurts, it probably hurts all through spring practice, and if they don't bring anybody in through the transfer portal, will hurt into fall practice, is not having a third meaningful quarterback on the roster. And that's not meant to be, I guess, disrespect to the guys, the walk-ons on the roster. They're serving their role, certainly, but with only two scholarship quarterbacks, it's hard to get the depth play with the offense to run like you'd like to see. I think it's Hoover looked really nice and Morris looked really nice. I think there were things about the offense that I wasn't too excited about. Mostly there were probably 3 or 4 of those turn and throw it straight to the sideline to someone standing like 20 yards away on the, you're throwing from one hash all the way to the other sideline to a receiver standing behind the line of scrimmage, that would get blown up each time, did not result in a completed pass, potentially is the kind of thing that turns into a pick six, turns into a fumble, that I was a little worried about. I know it's a spring game. You're not showing your real offense maybe, but that was concerning. But one good thing of the offense that maybe we were expecting was a lot of really good use of that tight end position. Jared Wiley had several catches. DJ Rogers, excuse me, like you said, had played a bunch and had a couple catches and had a touchdown, where on a rollout play that was really nice. So good to see that as well. It's hard to gauge the defense because there were a lot of injuries. I mean, the depth chart was really being tested there on the defense. No Jamoy Hodge, no Josh Newton, and really throughout the defensive depth chart, there wasn't a lot. There were a few sacks, not true sacks, obviously. Nobody's bringing the quarterback to the ground in a spring game, but quarterbacks were getting hassled back there, which, I don't know if that's good on the defensive line or bad on the offensive line, or if it was quarterbacks just getting happy feet and ready to scramble. But I think in all, there's a lot to like on this roster, and certainly big shoes to fill moving forward, trying to step up into this team that made the national championship game last season. But looks to be that there's every opportunity. They've brought in some really, really strong players to step right in and bring this thing right to see what happens this fall. I mean, I think it's going to be very exciting. I know there's been, I think the Colorado spring game is this weekend, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of show they put on for their spring game and kind of get a first look at TCU's first opponent coming up.
Yeah, and we'll see if Shedeur Sanders gets to have his receivers line up against more practice squad type guys, or if they're going to put their real corners out there for
I think they
kid.
had you. I was out there. I was hanging out in Boulder, running routes with
They had me
with
out
Travis
there. Yeah,
Hunter.
they had me
Yeah.
out there guarding Travis Hunter. And no, but to your point
Oh
about
man.
the quarterback situation, that's something that we've talked about on the podcast several times. And I think looking at this transfer portal window, I believe it's April 30th is the last day that players
Yep.
have to put their name in. So there are still several days to come there. There are players all around college football entering the portal, not just at TCU. So I know some people on social media have been a little concerned about the number of players that are leaving the Frogs right now, but and we'll get into that in a few minutes here. But I have no doubt in my mind that the Frogs are going to go out and find a veteran quarterback, perhaps someone who's maybe competing for a job right now, and may get that clarity here pretty soon that, hey, you're going to be the number two guy or the number three guy going into fall camp, and maybe that prompts a player to enter the portal, and there'll be more movement coming over these next several days. But I have no doubt in my mind that Sonny Dykes and Kendall Briles, they're going to go out and add a quarterback, honestly, maybe even two quarterbacks to the roster, and then we're going to see some other depth additions as well. I know Jeff Mitchell, who does an awesome job with 247, put out a article earlier today that TCU is going to be hosting a receiver transfer target from Minnesota. Could be a big boost there with a couple of guys leaving in the portal. We talked about Jordan Hudson very briefly already there. So still plenty of it's going to be this off season, man. It goes long. The season obviously starting in August with fall camp, and then football from September through hopefully late January, early February. But still, it kind of drags a little bit. I'm excited. I wanna see the Frogs get back on the field, and hopefully we continue to add some good players. Obviously, this transfer class that's already on campus is tremendous, and we're seeing guys just like last year be able to step in from day one and be instant contributors. And hopefully that trend continues here as we'll likely see TCU continue to add to the roster over these next several weeks.
And yeah, I guess just one thing on spring games in general. I think it's funny that people like to take big takeaways from spring games. I don't know that TCU fans have done that too much. There hasn't been a lot of sweeping declarations about TCU based on this spring game performance. I think maybe there's a little more Josh Hoover hype than you would have expected, or maybe not. Maybe people are really excited about Josh Hoover, but I think about around the country how like the Texas spring game has everybody deciding that the Longhorns will definitely be in the national championship game. This team has already won the Big 12, and maybe they do this every year with Texas. Maybe that's just a Texas thing, and not a spring game thing. But and that Arch Manning is the worst quarterback to ever play, and that Texas is definitely going to the national championship game. I just think it's kind of funny. These are practices, and we're not anywhere close to even what these final rosters will look like, much less what they will look like on the field against real live competition. So everything is a grain of salt, but I think mostly, like you said, no injuries, no major injuries, and everybody gets to go on to their next phase, whether it's into that transfer portal, if they find themselves deep on the depth chart, or into the summer break and the summer practices, with kind of knowing, all right, here's what we need to do to move forward into fall. And I guess with that, we'll hit on the transfer portal now. A lot of players have jumped into the portal, and I think this is the way college sports are now. We can run through the list of players. It's a long list, but the transfer portal it's going to give players, and then it's going to take players. I think TCU is going to be very active on both sides of that. TCU brought in a very strong transfer and recruiting class from the winter, and there's only so many spots on the depth chart where you're going to get playing time, and for the most part, the folks who have decided to take that next step to find greener pastures were probably pretty well buried on that depth chart. I think it's fair to say. Or they've been around for a long time, just looking for something new. With that, though, the one big name who probably doesn't qualify for either of those topics is Jordan Hudson. There's been some negative things come out about him after this, about, maybe he was starting to fall behind some of the newcomers and fall behind on the depth chart. But the fact remains, he was, a big time 4-star recruit. He played a lot as a true freshman, and he was expected to be a big time contributor for TCU going into this next season and beyond. And so it was a surprise that we heard his name hit the portal right away on day one of the window opening.
Yeah, Jordan Hudson, I think when we looked at Quentin Johnston being the number one guy and then Jordan Hudson gets recruited, we looked at Jordan Hudson maybe being the next number one featured receiver for TCU down the line. And Jeremy Clark with 247 and Horned Frog Blitz, who does an unbelievable job covering TCU sports, and again, Steven Johnson with the Star Telegram, they made some comments that I found very interesting after the news broke that Jordan Hudson was entering the portal. Jeremy had mentioned that he went to all 15 of the spring practices and didn't feel that Jordan Hudson was really one of the top receivers coming out of spring camp. He mentioned that maybe he was playing like the fourth or fifth best guy, which, if that's true, and I trust his judgment more than maybe anyone else that covers TCU sports, that probably means he wasn't going to be a starter going into fall camp. And if I also remember back during the winter time, there were some rumors floating around that maybe Jordan Hudson was going to enter the portal, opted to stick with the program, went through spring practice, and maybe that indecisiveness was a reason why he didn't have a very good spring camp. I don't know, but Steven Johnson also did put out a tweet that was deleted shortly after, but it alluded to money and NIL being a factor in Jordan Hudson leaving, which I don't want to get too much into speculation. Personally, I know there are some rumors floating around social media involving a certain red and blue program from across the way in the Metroplex, potentially floating out some deals for TCU guys in the portal, but
Gold Trans Am. Yeah.
But you know what? I think for Jordan Hudson, if he wasn't in the running to be a starter after spring camp, and that the thing with the portal and NIL and immediate eligibility these days is, I just don't think you're going to see players stick around to develop the way that maybe they had before. I think if you're a blue chip prospect or a big time 4-star, 5-star guy, and you're not playing a lot after year one, or maybe going into year two, you're not making the leap that you thought you would, there's really more incentive to just go into the portal and you can go get your playing time. And if it's NIL related, you can go get that money and play somewhere else, whether it's an inferior program or not. And then, you get your experience and you get your reps and your tape, and then you take that experience as a stepping stone, and then you go somewhere else. So it's become a very transactional business, unfortunately, but that's Division I college football, and it is ultimately disappointing. Like you mentioned with some of these other guys, I can go ahead and read through the list here real quick. I'm gonna tilt my phone here. I'm leaning it up against my laptop. We got Blair Conwright, he's played a little bit over the last couple of years. Noah Daniels, I'll always have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for him after he called one of my articles trash 3 years ago, and didn't see a whole lot of playing time after that. But we got Kyron Chambers, the freshman corner. We got Keontae Jenkins, who's a former 4-star guy and had been around for a while, just wasn't able to crack the depth chart. Landon Watson, the linebacker. Alex Honig, the former German quarterback recruit turned tight end. He entered the portal today. Noah Boltikov, who's an offensive lineman. Altrique Barlow, another offensive lineman. Doug Blue Eli, who was a JUCO transfer last year on the defensive line. And then Deshaun McEwen, the safety. So I think, like you said, a lot of these guys probably weren't going to see significant reps outside of maybe special teams, and so I don't blame them for wanting to enter the portal and go elsewhere. But I think for a player like Jordan Hudson, I think people are discouraged because he is a former high-rated recruit and was a player that I think if you looked at TCU's offense and said, who is the guy that you think is going to have a breakout season and really become maybe a star for this offense? If it's not Chandler Morris, it's probably Jordan Hudson because he had a like you said, he had a really good freshman season where he played a lot and had some really good flashes. I mean, he scored 3 touchdowns. He caught over 100 yards and um, was a player that I was really excited about, along with Cordell Russell, who's another really talented 4-star guy coming in. But, at the end of the day, whether it's about wanting more playing time or more NIL guap or whatever the situation is, at the end of the day, as fans, we want players that want to be here and they want to develop with TCU and they want to eventually see the field for TCU. So um, I'd imagine that some of these spots, looking at this list again, that's 2 wide receivers in the portal, 3 cornerbacks, a couple of offensive linemen. So um, the portal is it's taketh right now. It's going to be giveth here over the next few weeks as TCU. No doubt in my mind, the Frogs are going to go out and add some players because again, this is happening all over college football. I don't know what the actual count is, but it's in the hundreds as far as how many players are in the portal. So we're going to be hearing a lot of news over the next month or so of players making visits and making commitments, and we'll have all that information as it comes about. But to all these guys, best of luck wherever they go, and excited to see how this roster ultimately turns out as we get into the summer.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but I think a lot of these guys probably would have ended up in the transfer portal in the winter window. But TCU really kind of avoided the winter transfer window being a playoff participant and continuing to the national championship game, to where these players who maybe could have seen the writing on the wall for their depth spots going forward weren't really willing to just give up the trip to the Fiesta Bowl, the trip to the national championship game to step into the transfer portal. So I think TCU was relatively unscathed in the winter window, and now it's hitting the Frogs here. And I mean, I think, as much as, we can't be thrilled to have J.P. Richardson and Jack Beck and Trey Sanders and JoJo Earl and on and on and on. We can't be super thrilled to have them, quit on their teams and transfer to TCU. I mean, you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth on that. I mean, I think that TCU is going to lose some players in that conversation as well. Clearly, no one's immune to it. Even Alabama's losing players. One of Georgia's top defensive linemen is in the transfer portal right now. So, I mean, it's not. This is happening to every program in the country. So, I think fans on Twitter and if you want to have fun arguments with SMU people, whatever, have at it. You could, you can punch down if you want to. But if that's where Hudson ends up going, the Frogs will have a chance to take it right back to him when they come to the Carter later in the fall. So, to this point, he has not actually committed there. Everything that's out there is just like swirling rumors of big payments and tampering and all of this nonsense. I mean, it would be pretty hilarious if SMU gets busted for some sort of cheating in this era where there's basically no way to cheat. Like, all you have to do is you can still pay the people. You just can't do this tampering and inducements and all of that. So I think it would be the death penalty team to be the one who finds a way to break the rules, even when there are basically no rules, would be. All right, so that's all for the transfer portal news and all the TCU football news. There'll be lots more to come as the transfer portal closes here in 10 days at the end of the month. And we'll see what comes of it, who the new frogs may be, who the future former frogs will be. But moving out of football and into the baseball diamond, where the Horned Frogs have not had much success of late, losing a non-conference series and a midweek non-conference game, dropping 2 of 3 to North Carolina Wilmington, and then losing to Lamar in the midweek. The TCU baseball is really struggling right now and is really unable to stack up those wins that kind of protect your RPI and protect your NCAA tournament resume. And, still a lot to play for in the conference, but a lot to be
And it's
worried
really
about this
frustrating
Horned Frog team right
because
now.
you would think after getting that big series win against Oklahoma State and then getting really into the second half of the season right now with the second half of the Big 12 schedule coming up, this would really be an opportunity to start generating quite a bit of positive momentum. And it's been a theme for TCU this year in some of these non-conference series. If you remember, they lost a series to San Diego earlier this season. They lost a series against Florida State earlier this year. They've fared really well on the neutral sites, going to Globe Life and going to Minute Maid, playing really well at those two series. But these home sets against non-conference teams, losing at Lupton is just not good. And looking at TCU's last 11 games, the Frogs are 6-5, and they're giving up 7.7 runs per game. And this team we know can score runs, scoring 17 runs in the win on Saturday, 17-5 over the Seahawks, but losing the opener on Friday, 14-6, in a game where Ryan Vanderhey actually got the start. If you remember, he had been yanked from the weekend rotation for a week, did not start against Oklahoma State, had been pitching out of the bullpen, but uh, Sarloos gave him a second chance against Wilmington, and it did not work out at all. TCU loses 14-6 on Friday, and then losing again 12-6 on Sunday, where Cam Brown once again just he didn't even get out of the second inning in this game, and it's just really, really disconcerting when you see those veteran guys continue to struggle the way they have. And right now TCU, I mean, I'm not going to pull any punches because TCU is almost 40 games into the season, 22-15 overall, 7-5 in the conference. It's nice to have winning records, and I think TCU could still realistically make a push for a Big 12 title, but the reality is this is a one-dimensional baseball team. This is a team, and it's a little strange because you have Kirk Saarloos, who's a former pitching coach, as your head coach. You would think that your pitching and your defense would be really strong, but it's the exact opposite. It's the offense that's averaging over 8 runs a game over the last 11 and has put up several double-digit scoring games. And this offense is tremendous, and it's been that way for nearly the entire season. The Frogs hit for power, they get on base, they draw walks, they steal bags, they make really good fundamental plays on offense. And I think the way this team can score, they're going to be competitive in every game they play. The problem is the defense is bad and the pitching is terrible. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm just kind of calling it how I see it. The freshman that, if you're putting Cole Klecker aside, Cole Klecker has really been the MVP of the pitching staff in its entirety this season. He's been excellent. He's been a quality start every time he's gone out there. That didn't change on Saturday. He pitched in that one and got the win. He's 7-2 now on the season. ERA in the low threes. he's been an absolute stud. But putting him and Garrett Wright aside, who's also looked pretty good over his last handful of outings since coming back from that injury, it's just been a cluster. I mean, the freshmen like Braden Sloan and Chase Hoover and Luis Rodriguez, they've really struggled over their last few weeks on the mound. And Ben Abeld, we've talked about him a few times. He's had a very up and down freshman year, and we knew at some point the freshmen were going to start taking their lumps. And for a while, I kind of felt like the freshmen were maybe punching above their weight class in terms of just the early returns and the success there. But um, when you combine that struggle that you're seeing with the freshman pitchers with the continued ineptitude of some of these veteran guys like Vanderhey and Cam Brown and Luke Savage, just for the sake that he's been hurt, he just hasn't been able to get out on the mound. He did return in the Lamar game on Tuesday, and he looked pretty good in his return there, and he's a huge asset to this pitching staff, and hopefully he can uh, really start to get it going because I don't really know who your starting pitchers are. I mean, you have Cole Klecker, who's going to start on Friday against West Virginia. Luis Rodriguez is going to start on Saturday. I'm not sure if he has started a game this year, maybe one earlier in the season, but uh, you're not going to see Cam Brown in the weekend rotation, and you're not going to see Ryan Vanderhei. As of right now, Sunday is a TBD, a to be determined. And when you're nearly 40 games into the season and you don't have three starting pitchers, that's not good. And so maybe it'll be a bullpen day. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Sarloos just threw Garrett Wright or Luke Savage out there and made it a bullpen day, or just have them be an opener, throw 2 or 3 innings, and then give the ball to Sam Stautenborough or someone else. But we're going to get to a point where this offense can only carry TCU so far. At some point, somebody's going to have to step up in this starting rotation other than Cole Klecker, and other guys are going to have to step up in the bullpen. I don't know who they're going to be, if they're going to be the freshmen or some of the veteran guys, but something's got to change with this pitching staff. And the defense has been pretty bad as well. There were a couple errors early in the game against Lamar that set the Frogs back, but the defense to me is really a secondary issue for this team right now. The pitching is priority one in terms of what needs to be fixed. And I feel like going into this series against West Virginia, having lost 2 out of 3 to Wilmington and then losing to Lamar at home, I mean, you shouldn't be losing 3 out of 4 at home to non-conference teams. And maybe the Frogs finally get a much needed wake-up call and they go out to West Virginia and play a really good weekend series. I hope that's the case, but in order for that to happen, some of these pitchers are going to have to start pitching. And I don't know if it's a confidence issue, if it's a developmental issue, if it's a talent issue. I really don't know, but it's really now or never for this ball club.
Yeah, and no matter how good the offense is, you're not able to just run out the clock on these games. I mean, we've seen TCU take big leads and immediately give it right away. So, it's hard to see this team as constructed and as its current form, making a deep run. And I think what the hope that TCU continues to hang on to is that these pitchers are slumping and their true selves will come out and be, they'll turn it on here in the last bit of the season, where, Cam Brown, Ryan Vanderhey turn into legitimate starting options that can eat 6 innings of play without sending you into a deep hole. That has to be the best that TCU can hope for at this point, because the pitching staff's it's just not getting it done. and not getting the help that it needs behind them either in the field. So it, it's really tough, and it's hard to talk about too, because we've on the one hand, TCU is losing 3 of 4 to non-power, uh, non-conference teams, but on the other hand is very much in the top of the conference, in the race for the Big 12, one of the top baseball conferences in the country. So it's not like they're a complete failure. This season isn't a wash at this point, but the ceiling that previous TCU baseball teams have had is just not there with this team, and I think that's the realization that we're all kind of coming to. That okay, winning the Big 12 would be a huge achievement for this team. Having a good run in the Big 12 tournament, and you know do I see this team getting out of a regional? I think it's really tough. I mean, TCU was just not able to bring in the pitching talent to replace the pitching talent that went out the door at the end of last season. I think maybe maybe TCU took a little bit for granted the Riley Cornelios and Perez and all of those guys that were so strong starters that you only had a few innings worth of relief pitching to get out of a game with a win. So it's just a tough situation, and TCU goes into a really tough weekend series here coming up in Morgantown, and West Virginia has been playing really good ball. Took a series off of Oklahoma State last weekend and is very capable of taking down TCU. But I think TCU can come right out and put themselves right back in the conversation with a series win here that keeps you right there hovering around the top spot in the conference. It's feels like a real make or break series here, where you get swept and you're really in the dumps. You sweep and you're feeling great, and you kind of expect it somewhere in the middle, but it's another kind of turning point. I think I expected the Texas Tech series to feel like a turning point, but then TCU came right back after that series loss and won the series at home against Oklahoma State. So it's been a little bit of back and forth. The conference play outside of Lupton Stadium has not been good, losing 2 series in Norman and in Lubbock. Hopefully the fortunes change headed out east
I
to
think
Morgantown.
this series is really an opportunity for some players to. It's kind of a make or break point in the season, and we'll see who rises to the challenge and who doesn't rise to the challenge. I think for a player like Luis Rodriguez getting a start on Saturday, this is an opportunity where if he can come out and pitch well, he struck out quite a few batters this year. He's been knocked around a little bit recently, but if he can come out and have a quality start and pitch with some confidence, that's something that you can really build on over the rest of this Big 12 schedule. And even offensively, as good as TCU has been, a lot of the production has come from the 2 to 5 hitters in the lineup. Trey Richardson has been steady Eddie as advertised, hitting over a little over 300. Braden Taylor is up to 13 home runs, I believe, now on the season. He's doing Braden Taylor things. Cole Fontenelle has been, and you could argue he's been the best hitter on the team from start to finish, just with his extra base power, home run power. I believe he's hitting well over 300 still. And then Anthony Silva has just been, I don't think you can really ask for much more than what he's given TCU on both ends, on offense and defense. And
he's been a monster.
He's bumped up one more spot in the lineup. I think he's hitting out of the 5-hole right now. But one player that I really want to see get going is Austin Davis. This is a player that was all Big 12 first team coming into the season, was really hot at the start of the year, but has cooled off quite a bit and is really kind of struggling. He's hitting around 240 right now, and maybe going back to West Virginia where he played for 4 seasons, I believe. Maybe that'll bring some good memories back, and he'll
Yeah,
get into a
take him
groove
home.
over the
Yeah.
weekend, and he can build on that. Because the Frogs are really going to need him. He was I think the big TC went into the portal and got a few Big 12 guys, but I think he was the one that was going to come in and play a big time role for this team on both sides of the ball. So really hoping that he can get it going. A couple other guys too, I think really need to get it going. Elijah Nunez is in a bit of a slump right now, and he's been dinged up a little bit with some injuries. Hopefully that's still not lingering, but you'd really hope to see him get going and his his base running and his speed combined with Austin Davis. I felt coming into the season that those two guys were really gonna command those top spots in the order with how they could get on base and swipe bags. That just hasn't been the case over the last, 3 or 4 weeks. So you hope he can get it together. David Bishop, we've talked about, has just not really been able to get it together this year. Struggled in the field, has been playing as a DH and is hitting, right around 200. And Luke Boyers, to his credit, is drawing walks like it's nobody's business, but is also, back to hitting a little over 200 as well. So, not to put any more pressure on the offense than there already is, because this offense is still putting up runs like crazy. Anytime you score 6 runs, you should win that game, I would say 8 out of 10 times. But um, it's a weekend of opportunity for some guys to show if this team can make a run, they're going to need to be two, three, or four guys that really step up and help this team turn the season around. So we'll see if TCU can find some guys to do that this weekend.
Yeah, if you're going to make a run, now's the time to do it. It'll be a interesting series out there in Morgantown. A big time spot for the Horned Frogs. Moving out of baseball into just a bit of basketball news. Not yet an official transfer, but have received a crystal ball and have seen the visits and kind of the tweets and stuff come out of Oklahoma State guard Avery Anderson III transfer. Has the opportunity to come into TCU and take on one of the guard roles. We'll see if Jamie Dixon and the coaching staff is able to lock him in. But this would be another pretty important addition to TCU basketball, filling that guard spot, particularly if Damian Ball ends up formally declaring for the NBA draft, which we haven't yet gotten word on. But with TCU seemingly dropped out of the Primo Spears race, the guard from Georgetown has kind of offered up his final two, and TCU wasn't on the list. So it looks like TCU's still in the market for a guard, and it could be Avery Anderson staying in the Big
Yeah,
12,
Primo Spears, I
coming down
believe,
to Fort
his
Worth.
Final Four were TCU, Kansas, Arkansas, and Florida State. And he did have a visit, I believe, earlier this week with TCU. I believe he was supposed to have it on Tuesday, and then yesterday I saw a tweet that his final two were Kansas and Florida State. So a little bit of a bummer there. I'm still of the mindset that Damian Baugh probably isn't coming back. I know he played in that showcase event recently that a lot of players that are going to the NBA draft have participated in. So um, the Frogs definitely do still need a guard. Obviously, Jameer Nelson is coming in. Trey Tennyson is coming in from Corpus Christi, but Avery Anderson is a guy who's been a 3-year starter and is averaging double figures over the last couple seasons. The shooting numbers aren't great. I think from the field, he is a little under 40% for his career. His three-point shooting numbers from this past season were kind of bizarre in the sense that he shot, I believe, 82% from the free throw line, but he shot 18% from 3-point range. So I'm not really sure. I think you're if you
Mm.
can shoot over 80% from the free throw line, you're a pretty good shooter. And so to shoot 18% from three, I'm not really sure what that's all about, but he's a double digit scorer. He can give you, 4 or 5 rebounds a game, and he's a plus defender. He's averaging well over 1 steal per game for his career. Not sure if he would be a starter. I think it would kind of vary on, at this point, assuming Damian Baugh is not coming back. Um, I think it would really depend on what you're looking for. If you're looking for offense, you can put Trey Tennyson out there with his shooting ability and pair him with Jameer Nelson, who I think is going to step into that Mike Miles lead scoring guard role next season. But also, if you want defense for offense, I think you could feel pretty comfortable putting Avery Anderson in and sharing the backcourt with Jameer Nelson. So if the Frogs wind up landing him, I think it would be a good addition. Hopefully, it pans out a little bit better than the Oklahoma State transfer that TCU added last year and Rondell Walker. And for all we know, his story is not over as a Frog either. Maybe he's able to uh, get into a good shooting rhythm and come back next year and work his way into a bigger role next year. But um, so far, the Frogs have gone out and they've added one of the best guards of the transfer class. They went out and added a center who's a double-double guy in Isam Mustafa from Coastal Carolina, and then also Trey Tennyson, who's a great shooter and a plus scorer. So right now, TCU has the number 6 rated transfer class in college basketball, according to 247, and that's a class that could potentially get stronger with the potential addition of Avery Anderson. So um, we'll see what happens. Of course, the offseason is still very early for basketball, about midway through it for football, but for basketball, um, we'll see what happens. I think it would be a good addition to this team. And also with Shahade Wells, we didn't mention him. He's in the portal. You lose PJ Haggerty, the freshman, to the portal as well. I know you have a couple of talented kids coming in, and Jace Posey, who's a wing player, and then Isaiah Manning, who's also a kind of a combo forward, could be a 3 or a 4, but you do need some ones and some twos. So hopefully the Frogs are able to make this addition and just continue to build on this already strong class.
Yeah, and Anderson was banged up a little bit this last season. He didn't play in either of the games against the Frogs in 2023, but he's definitely had some monster games over the years and has that scoring ability and has also been tasked to be kind of the point guard, floor general as well. So it would definitely be a good addition, like you said. All right. Hitting the last and final things here. So TCU men's tennis did have its season finale last week, last Saturday night, losing in Austin 5-2 to number 1 Texas. So right now Texas has the season series leading 2-1 with splitting a trophy each way. So TCU took down the Longhorns in the indoor national championship, and Texas earns the Big 12 regular season title with that win last Saturday. This coming weekend is the Big 12 tournament. It's in Lawrence, Kansas, and the Horned Frogs are the 2 seed and will play Saturday morning against a winner from one of the Friday matches. So TCU still has an opportunity to go out and win this Big 12 tournament and would need to most likely be facing Texas again in that final contest on Sunday, which will be broadcast on ESPN Plus. So some exciting tennis to come, and with the NCAA tournament kind of selection show is right after that. I think Monday or Tuesday, they do the team one day, and then they do the singles and doubles bracket announcement the next day. So I think it's pretty likely TCU will be hosting a regional portion of that tournament, and probably a top 4 seed in the field, but still tennis to play before then with the Big 12 tournament coming up. But I guess looking back at the contest against Texas, there was definitely an opportunity for TCU to take this match. This was broadcast on the Longhorn Network, so I did watch a lot of this one, and man, TCU won the doubles point and won it pretty convincingly with the Fernley-Famba combo taking down Elliot Spizzirri, who's the number 1 singles player, and I think they were the number 2 doubles pair before losing to TCU. But in the singles, Texas really ended up able to run away with it. Several third sets. Man, Jake Fernley had Spizzirri dead to rights, had won the first set and needed tiebreakers, and Spizzirri comes out of that alive and then takes the third set. Really an opportunity missed there. Luke Famba also had an opportunity missed where he drops the opening set on a couple double faults, and where he had several set points that ended up going to tiebreaker. I think TCU definitely probably can feel like they were right on the brink there and just were unable to take the key points when it mattered most. But I think those are two of probably the 2 best teams in the country facing off. So, it's not any bad thing to lose to one of the best teams in the country. And, maybe TCU will get 1 or 2 more opportunities to face off with the Longhorns again. Maybe with
you'd hope that maybe the third time would be the charm, after getting that indoor championship and moving to the outdoor season and suffering a couple of tough losses. And the only 2 losses that TCU has suffered this year have been to Texas. So hopefully the Frogs can use that as fuel, and they can throw that fuel on the fire as they get ready for the Big 12 tournament. And then, like you said, I think this team is destined to make a very lengthy run in the NCAA tournament. And I think for this team to win an indoor championship and then have as much success as it did during the outdoor season, I mean, there's no reason why TCU couldn't win a national championship. The talent is there. The ability of this team to roll out 6 guys that are all ranked, I believe, in singles. This is an extremely deep team, and I'm hoping for the best, and hopefully TCU can get that postseason momentum started here with a Big 12 championship.
So other postseason news, TCU Equestrian finished up its season in the Final Four, in the semifinals of, I guess, the NCEA.
I want to say it's National Collegiate Equestrian Association. That's me using my yes.
That's some good context clues there. But they did win the first contest against Texas A&M, but fell to SMU in the semis. So another very successful season for that program that is consistently one of the best in the country. And TCU Beach Volleyball, we talked about it at the top, but winning 3 more matches, but did pick up its first loss of the season, falling to UCLA and falling out of its perch at atop the standings there to fall to number 2 overall. So headed into their conference tournament next weekend, and that's the CCSA is their conference. It's an interesting collection of squads. I think it's headlined by, I think, LSU and some others. But really, from there will be the NCAA tournament in Gulf Shores, Alabama, that TCU will certainly get an invite and will have an
And
opportunity
again,
to
I do
go win a
apologize
national
to the
championship.
beach volleyball program and the beach volleyball fans for the jinx if you happen to be listening. But I will say this, to beat Florida State at the end of the weekend was huge. I know going in, the three matches that were guaranteed were Cal Poly, UCLA, and Pepperdine. I know TCU has played Pepperdine at least once or twice already this year and had no trouble whatsoever. But to close out the weekend with the number 4 team in the country, Florida State, after suffering your first loss of the season and having I think at that point it would be 30-0, having a 30 match win streak ended. Coming back and winning 3-2 over the Seminoles was a really important win, I think, for this team as they look to secure a conference championship and then make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. So 31-1 overall in the regular season is fantastic. Unbeaten at home for the third consecutive year. Um, just a shout out for having a fantastic season, and we'll see it hopefully conclude at the top here with getting knocked down to number 2, but hopefully they're able to reclaim that spot at number 1 when it's all said and done with a couple of championships.
That's right. Exciting times here coming up as these spring sports enter kind of the postseason, end of season phase, and lots more to cover. We appreciate you all listening to us here on this podcast and following us on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere. I think we did lose our blue check today.
Thanks,
So,
Elon. Appreciate it.
I'm certainly not going to be ponying up the $8. I think, if Vox Media, if SB Nation wants to fund that for us, that'd be just fine. But I think we'll just have to go back to being a regular old internet blog on Twitter. So still, we appreciate all the support and all the interaction on all of the social media, and hope everyone's enjoying it. And with that, we'll close. Go Frogs.